Hi, and welcome back to Morgan Reach TV for episode 42. Today we are delving deep into the changing landscape of politics here in the second city of Birmingham. With the Birmingham City Council elections fast approaching, there is a growing movement of independent voices looking to change and challenge the established party lines. Today's guest is at the very heart of that conversation. He is an independent candidate for Birmingham City Council, a man whose presence on the ballot has sparked intense debate across the national media and within our local neighbourhoods. From his vocal stance of cleaning up the city and tackling municipal management to his complex history and the discussion surrounding his past in Yemen, which is long addressed as a point of contention, he remains a figure who refuses to be ignored. Whether you see him as a community advocate pushing for a common sense approach to local issues, or you have questions about the path that led him to this political stage, one thing is certain: he has a story to tell. Joining us for episode 42 to discuss his vision for Birmingham, rise of the Independent Candidate Alliance, and why he believes it's time for a new direction. So please help me in welcoming Shahid Butt to Morgan Reach TV. Assalamualaikum.
Walaikum salam.
How you doing?
I'm good, alhamdulillah. How are you?
Yeah, I'm all right, thank you. Thank you for taking the time out of your very, very busy schedule at the moment to come and see us.
Well, thanks for inviting me. It's my pleasure.
No, it'd be very interesting for us and for our viewers and audience to hear from you at the moment, especially in this, that it's right timely, run up to your big day. Well, when's the election days?
May the 7th.
May the 7th, so it's coming up quite quick. So less than a month to go.
Yeah.
And I've been watching all your videos and I've been following on your campaign. I've seen obviously the positive and the negative. So it's great to have you here and to hear about the story, really, because what we want to concentrate more on, we obviously, you've probably seen some other episodes, but we concentrate on your story and how you've come to be where you are today, and your motivations and your kind of the skills that have been built up to bring you to today. So Birmingham, you were born in Pakistan. When did you move to England? How old were you?
Yeah, so I was born in Lahore, in Pakistan. I came to the UK in 1965.
Okay.
So brilliant. I was very young when I came.
Yeah.
Still a baby, actually.
Yeah.
My whole life's been spent in Birmingham.
Fantastic. So all your life memories kind of like in Birmingham? Yeah,
everything. Kind of, from growing up, I grew up in Sparkhill, Borsalete and Sparkhill. In the 70s, 60s. Obviously, I was a little kid then, but obviously when I became a teenager, in the 70s and the 80s, life was very different then.
Yeah.
It wasn't like how it is now. there was a lot of racism at that time. I grew up in that era of the National Front, skinheads, far right racist gangs, and that was basically my background. That's how I sort of almost got pushed into the direction that I went into. Education was zero. I got kicked out of school when I was a year before my GCSEs, CSEs in those days.
That's it.
Ironically, I got kicked out of school for fighting some National Front guys who had come to the school to attack the Asian kids. And then I got into a fight with them. The teachers saw that. And the next day I was called into the office and, I was given my marching orders. So that kind of set the tone for me going forward. The whole sort of the main sort of turning point for me as a young kid was when I was 11 years old, when I actually first time I got jumped by a gang of these skinheads, National Front.
So that would have been like straight as soon as you were in secondary school.
As soon as I got into secondary. Well, actually, it was my second week in secondary school.
Really?
That was a wake up call. Obviously, I was too young to understand what was going on.
The politics.
When I think back now, I can understand. But at that time, I'm just for those of you who've got kids, your 11-year-old son, what does he know about the world or about politics or about anything? All he's concerned about is playing football and playing video games and whatever. I was the same. So I had a very rude awakening to reality of life. And I think that triggered something in me. As we know in psychology, the fight or flight switch. Alhamdulillah, I was lucky that my fight switch was triggered and not my flight. So I didn't become a victim. I sort of, I had to fix myself up. And then the whole sort of story just starts from there, really.
Yeah, because at those times, obviously there's prolific National Front skinheads. There's a lot of groups and a lot of things going on at the time. The politics was very bad. What was the group called? Was it like a gang that formed to kind of defend against?
Yeah, so in the early 80s, 1980s, we, a couple of us, formed a gang called the Lynx in Sparkhill. That Sparkhill was our stomping ground, because that's where we used to hang around, and, that's where we all sort of lived. Sparkhill Park, Stafford Road, and this was our, you see, people assume that we were like criminals or want to be gangsters, but actually that wasn't the case. The reason that we set up this gang, because as a group of young teenagers, we were hanging around together anyway, and we would just go around here and there, and we were getting into trouble, getting into fights with other, white racist gangs. And at that time, it wasn't really safe for Asian people. These white racist gangs would, go around the areas. They would spit on our moms. They would, rob their jewelry. If they were with their kids in the park, they'd set the dogs onto the kids. This was our reality, growing up as a young person. So what we did was more of a reaction to what was going on. You could say that we were trying to defend our area. It wasn't for any criminality or whatever. It was to defend our area. It was to protect our families from these racist gangs. And when I talk to younger people, it's very hard for them to actually imagine that. Today, Ladypool Road, Stafford Road, Sparkhill, Borsell Heath, Allen Rock, any of these areas, they just can't comprehend that it was like that. See, now you might be a majority in these areas, but it wasn't always like that. It was very hard for our parents who came here, with nothing, and they had to face all of this. So, they were first generation, I'm second generation. The only difference is that our parents, this is my opinion, still had that kind of colonial mentality where, the Gora and the white man and, the Commonwealth and, the empire ruling everything. They still had that, what I would call a subservient mentality towards them. And they weren't willing to, change the status quo. Whereas when I started growing up, I'm like, well, no, you can't. What do you mean, you're a effing Paki and go back to where you come from? Where do you want me to go back to? Back to Birmingham. I don't get it. And, what's with all, are you better than me? Am I inferior to you? Who said that you're better than me? So I didn't have that inferiority complex. It was almost like it was a rebellion against that. And that's kind of set the whole scene for my whole trajectory in my life of being rebellious to the status quo.
Because what were the steps after that? Because obviously, as you're growing up as a teenager, were there brushes with the law because of this?
Yeah, I've been in trouble with the police growing up. My dad, used to have to come to the police station and bail me out, and I'd be getting a bollocking and a clip around the ear hole. And then I have to go home and face my mom with that, with that jutti getting ready to give me.
Was that the worst thing?
That was worse than being arrested. Police, it's getting getting the jutti from mom, but it was part and parcel of, unfortunately, how life was for me at that time. I didn't have an education, so I've never had any formal education. I've got no degrees. I've never been to college or university. Everything that I've learned from the streets and just growing up and just general, life experiences. And I do jokingly say that I do have a PhD in life. So. I'm 61 years old. I've seen a lot of things in my life. I've traveled around the world. I'm sure we're going to go into that. So I have a lot of life experience. And, in my modern day work that I do, one of the things that I do is I do a lot of mentoring and working with young people because I have a passion for young people. If you look at all my social media and all my talks and everything, it's always about the next generation. Because I believe that, we need to focus on the next generation. So that's all I've been doing, for many, many decades now, is mentoring, working with young people, getting them out of gangs and drugs and crime. And the reason why I'm able to connect with them, even though I'm not a young person, but I can still connect with them because I have that history, because I've been to prison. I've been to prison in this country. I've been to prison abroad. I've been arrested. I have a criminal record, so I understand, the complexities of growing up in a deprived area. And that's why I'm able to connect with the younger generation.
Yeah, no, of course. So here you are, you're a teenager. You're out of school now. You're in, you're trying to defend your family and the families around you. What did you do then? What was your next steps from there?
So, I mean, the actual, so those early days was just spent in, hanging around cafes, playing pool and just doing the kind of stupid things that, kids do when they're young and all the rest of the sort of stuff. I don't want to go into all the nitty gritty of it because I don't want to expose my sins. But, I wasn't, I was a bit of a, as some of my friends would call me, I was a bit of a barbarian. Actually, what did he say to me? I remember he called me, and I still remember those words. He said, Shahid, you're an uncouth barbarian. And I'm like, I know what barbarian means. What does uncouth mean? And because he was from Lahore as well, actually, but he was from a very, sort of well-to-do family. And it's crazy that we became friends. And, he was always smartly dressed in his blazer and whatever. And his dad was always smartly dressed with nice clothes and a cravat and everything. And, he said to me, you're always wearing these tracksuits and, what are you doing? He's the one that actually introduced me into a lot of, fashion wear. And, he got me the Esquire magazine and GQ magazine. Said, read these magazines to learn how to dress properly. So my upbringing was not very productive from the way that most people would see it.
Yeah.
But in hindsight, it was very productive for me because I learned a lot from the streets, growing up, getting involved, getting into trouble, here and there, criminality and going to prison and all of that sort of stuff. And then I think sort of towards the late 1980s, in fact, 1989, some people may remember there was a guy called Salman Rushdie who wrote a book called The Satanic Verses.
Yeah.
And, I was made aware of this, and there was some coaches leaving because there was going to be a massive demonstration in Hyde Park.
Yeah.
And some coaches from the local mosque. In those days, I used to live on Ombersley Road by the Sultan Bow place.
Yeah.
And they were organising coaches. So I just jumped on the coach. For me, it was a bit of a jolly as well, Going to London was a big thing in those days, So I thought, I'll go there as well and see what it's all about. I wasn't really practicing in the sense I wasn't praying 5 times a day. I was a Muslim by name, but I didn't really know much about Islam. Obviously this triggered me because like most Muslims like me, even now, they may not be fully practicing, but when Islam is attacked, something triggers inside them, especially when something negative is said about our Prophet and about the wives of the Prophet ﷺ. So that sort of triggered something in me. I went there, it's a long story, tens of thousands of people were there, and Westminster Bridge, it got to a confrontation with the police. On the bridge itself, it got into a bit of a big fight with the police, and, me being me, I got into the middle of it all and, getting into an altercation with the police, and then I got arrested, and I was taken to Westminster police station. Now, when I was at the police station, while they were roughing me up, one of the coppers said to the other one, this guy is resisting, he thinks he's something special. Why don't we get a pork sandwich and shove it down his throat? This effing part-time Muslim. Now, a couple of things were happening to me that cognitive reactions were taking, was happening in my mind. First of all, what does it mean by a part-time Muslim? In my mind, I'm a full-time Muslim. So that triggered something. And then the blatant racism and the Islamophobia, that word didn't exist in those days. Was that what's with the pork sandwich down my throat? So not that I was naive to understand that racism existed, but when it comes from authority and someone in uniform, it hits a bit harder.
Definitely.
I would say that was my political awakening as well as my Islamic awakening. Because after that, I started to become a lot more practicing. I started to study. I started to read. I started to investigate religion more, Islam more. And also, it also made me start looking at international things as well. Because of the whole, what happened with this, this book, it opened my eyes to an international world of how Muslims are being attacked and how Muslims are being, vilified. And we're talking 1989, 1990s, when it wasn't even fashionable in those days.
Yeah.
The people around me were obviously, Shahid's gone mad, Shahid's into conspiracy theories. Because I was telling people, it's not about the color of your skin, it's the fact that we're Muslims. This is 1989, 1990. It was not, nobody could understand what I was saying. They were like, no, they're just racist. I go, no, they're not just racist. It's a deeper rooted, this is to do with civilizations. They have a beef with us going back centuries, and they just can't get their head around it. And it's to do with Islam. They see Islam as some kind of a threat to them, whereas we know Islam is not a threat to anybody, but in their mind, I wouldn't say everybody's, but in a very strong group of them feel that we are a threat. And for some reason, they need to basically deal with us, that they need to put us in a corner and just deal with us. Obviously, people couldn't understand what I was saying at the time. They're like, what are you on about? No. And here we are today in 2026. I don't think I need to prove my point anymore, do I? The Islamophobia, the open hatred of Muslims in this country, in Britain. Yeah. They're calling for the killing of Muslims blatantly. We've all seen the marches by Tommy Robinson. They're bringing all these speakers here, burning, the Islamic flags, burning the Quran. Islam is a disease. And openly calling for the killing of Muslims. Yeah. Supported by politicians, by people like Elon Musk, calling for a civil war. I mean, these guys are crazy, so it's like all of that led to all of this. So Alhamdulillah, I feel very, and I thank Allah that He's always kept me ahead of the game. Whereas everybody else, He said, umming and ahhing and twiddling their thumbs. I've already moved on.
It's denial, isn't it? Naivety. They don't want to believe it.
It's that ostrich with the head in the sand. They just don't want to face reality.
Yeah.
And I understand why. It's because, look, it's like I put up a post a couple of weeks ago that a lot of people approach me and say, Shahid, we fully support you. We love what you're doing. We fully support you, but we can't do it openly. And then obviously people have commented at the bottom, they're cowards, they're this, they're that, they're scared. And, I'm not going to say that, everyone's got whatever reasons they've got. But generally what I found is that, people are just worried about their lifestyle, their work, their position. They don't want to be associated because it might just bring negativity to their business or to their job or whatever. I can understand that, but I don't accept that. Because at the end of the day, I have to work. I have to feed my family. I've got 5 kids. I've got daughters. I've got to get them married. So I'm in the same boat as everybody else. I'm not a multimillionaire. I just live like everybody else. So what are you afraid of? Am I a murderer or a rapist or a drug dealer or whatever? In fact, if I was a drug dealer, you would be inviting me to your son's wedding and to all your weddings and to your birthday parties. But because I'm Shahid Butt and I've got this, whatever, we want to keep away from him because we might get... But you don't say that when it comes to drug dealers within your own families who are pulling up in Lamborghinis and they never worked a day in their lives. Why? Because he's got a nice car. So, double standards, it's not... But I'm over that. I left all that behind. I don't feel bitter about it or whatever. I just... If I start to worry about all of these things, then, it will just drag me down. I just keep moving forward. I'm a solutions guy. I see a problem, find a solution, implement it, let's move on.
Oh, fantastic. Because in the 90s, what led you to, so obviously you're looking at an international problem now. Did you join, was it a charity group, say, that you were with, a humanitarian project?
In 1990, once I had obviously brought myself back to being a Muslim, I started to pray, I started to read.
The police did you a favour in that sense, though.
They did, yeah, because they kind of, gave me that push that I needed, And I remember, as I went, because there was no internet in those days or whatever.
Yeah.
I went to the Islamic bookshop and I brought, all the Sahih al-Bukhari, Sahih Muslim, the Seerah of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, Riyat al-Makhtoum, and, all these, the books on fiqh and everything. And I had like big piles of books. And I just literally spent days and nights just reading. And it was almost, it was like, like you're a thirsty person. You keep drinking, but your thirst is not satiated.
Yeah,
you want more and more and more.
Yeah.
Because what I realized was, even though on the outward side of me, I was this, big, large character, loud and, a man's man kind of thing. But inside, I was empty. I was just a shell inside. It was just all bravado. There was no real substance to me inside as a, deep substance. But when I started to read about Islam and I started praying 5 times a day and I started to understand and I read the Quran with English translation, it completely changed me as a person. It gave me depth of understanding, depth of personality, and it made me want to become a better person. It actually calmed me down a lot because I used to have a problem. I think they call it, is it red mist? When you just kind of like go crazy.
Yeah, you just lose it.
And I used to suffer from that a lot. If somebody just looked at me, I start fighting them. Like, what are you looking at? And I just get into a rage. And it was very dangerous. And, it was like, I just had this. And I think it's because, growing up, I was constantly told, you're an effing packy. You don't belong here. And I sort of grew up with a bit of an inferiority complex. So I had this thing where I always have to prove myself. Even for my family as well, I'm the black sheep of the family. I didn't really get an education. My brothers and sisters were all got degrees and blah, blah, blah. So it was always like, this guy's useless. He's never going to be anything. Typical, Pakistani family. And so it's like I always had to prove myself. Constantly having to prove myself. And that's why I was getting into all of these fights and getting into all of this trouble. But when I started to study Islam, and when Islam came into my heart, my whole personality changed. I became a softer person. I became a calmer person. And all of these, issues that I was having, they just all went, and it was a new journey where I need to become a different person. So I did Hajj in 1990. After that, it was like, right now, I'm going to, I'm a new man. Let's go for it. In 1992, I was coming out of Birmingham Central Mosque and there was a guy giving out video cassettes. We never had CDs or DVDs or whatever. It was like a little VHS, like a brick you put into the, sometimes when I tell this shit, some people look at me, especially the young ones, like, what's one of those?
What's a VHS? I'm old enough to remember.
Yeah, you'll remember that. All the the VCRs we used to hire at home, watch all the Amitabh Bachchan films and Jackie Chan films. So the video cassette was called Massacres in Bosnia and Croatia.
Okay.
I took it home, I put it on in the VCR, and I watched it. And this was a very un-PC, uncut, raw footage of what was going on in Bosnia. It was graphic. Dead bodies, women, children, other stuff. I don't want to, because I don't want this. We have a sister here, and I don't want to talk about it in too much detail. But it was very, very horrific what I saw. Now remember, I'm not a shrinking violet. I've been stabbed. I've been to hospital. I've been stitches in my head. I've been battered, beaten. I've seen blood. I've beaten others. So I'm not like, I haven't, I don't know violence. I know violence personally, but this was something that was so grotesque that I just couldn't fathom it.
Shocked you as well.
It shocked my system. And I still remember how I felt at the time. And I've spoken about it so many times, but I still have the same feeling. The thought that came into my mind was, how can one human being be so barbaric to another human being? That was the thought that came into my mind. For those that don't know, at that time, there was an ethnic cleansing taking place. The Christian Serbs were killing the Bosnian Muslims. They were that's where the term ethnic cleansing came. Yeah. They were doing a genocide of Muslims in Bosnia at that time. In 92, towards the end of 92, it started. So I thought, okay, I need to do something about this. I need to help. So I got involved with the charity. The charity was going to go to Bosnia. We took about 6 coaches full of aid, and the plan was to deliver the aid and bring refugees back to the UK. In fact, a lot of the refugees from Bosnia, the first generation of them who are in Birmingham right now, are people that we brought back.
Yeah.
All those decades
times,
ago.
Yeah.
So we got to Bosnia. We got to Zagreb, and there was on the border with Croatia, and we couldn't go in because the border was closed. So the charity organizer said, we're going to just deliver the food on this side of the border. Me being the sort of, pain in the backside kind of guy, I'm like, no, we have to go into Bosnia because that's what we said we were going to do. And that was my intention. They said, well, we can't go in. So I kind of fell out with them. I was mooching around Zagreb for a couple of days thinking, what am I going to do? There were other aid organizations where they had like a big building where they all sort of congregated.
Yeah.
So one day I was sitting there drinking some coffee, and somebody came up to me and said, oh, because I'd already spoken to people and said, look, this guy over here, he's from London, and he's a private charity, and he actually goes into Bosnia. He's got ways of getting in. Maybe you might want to talk to him. So cut a long story short, sat down, talked to him, and I said, look, can I come with you? He said, yeah, fine, no problem. So the next day I jumped in the van with him. He had some locals, Croatians and Bosnians, who were smuggling people across the borders. So they smuggled us across the border. We drove in. I mean, this is a much longer story to you, but I'm just going to give you the succinct version of it. Yeah. Otherwise we'll be here all day talking about it. We drove to a town called Travnik. We got to the masjid there, and the imam of the masjid said, look, there's a school that's been converted into a refugee center. You need to go there and give the aid out there. We went to this school. We spoke to the organizers. They gave us a big room. They lined up all the mothers and their kids outside in the corridor, and I was given the task of handing out food packs, which we'd already made. So once coming on food packs, handing out, did all of that, emptied everything out. So momentarily, I had this feeling of euphoria, like I've done something.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, I'm the useless one. I'm the one that, hasn't made his parents proud. So here I am, thousands of miles away from Spark Hill, to the war zone of Bosnia, handing out food parcels. Wow. So I was really chuffed with myself at the time. But my happiness was short-lived, because when I came out of the classroom, there was still a whole line of mothers with their children. And even though I didn't understand their language, I had to walk past them, and I knew what they were saying. Well, what about us? You're not going to give us anything. Now, when I got to the end of the corridor, like I said, you got to understand that I'm going through a roller coaster of emotions here. People see refugee camps on television. It's not the same as physically being there. When I got there, when you smelled the stench of death, and you hear the cries of women and children, and you look into the eyes of people who have got no hope. They're just dead eyes, because they've seen atrocities. They've seen atrocities happen in front of them. And all of this, like I said, I thought I was a tough guy, but I wasn't prepared for all of this. And psychologically, it had such an effect on me. And then when I got to the end of the corridor, I was an emotional, wreck. I started crying. I was so upset, and I thought to myself, what am I going to do? How, I'm here. What am I going to do? I've got no money to give them. I've got no more food to give them. And at that time, I think I went back to my basic instinct, which were these, I thought, I'm going to fight. So I stayed. I joined the Bosnian army. They had a foreign fighters brigade, the Mujahideen, and I joined them, and I stayed in Bosnia. So I was there for a couple of years. I used to come and go. I'd do a stint, and then I'd come back, and then I'd do a stint, and then I'd come back. And then during that time, I also, you could say, I got bitten by the bug, the soldier bug. I always wanted to be I always liked the military anyway. I actually tried to join the British Army twice. In the UK when I was 18 years old. They're Royal Marine Commandos, but they rejected me. So then I wanted to learn more and get further training. So I was told there by the guys, that look, the best place to get training is Afghanistan, because that's the epicenter of, of all the Mujahideen. So I traveled to Afghanistan as well. I got further military training there, commando training there. And my plan was to then go to Kashmir to fight against the Indian occupying army in Kashmir. I got to Kashmir. I got to as close as I could. I was with a group called Jamaat Islami. But I wasn't allowed to go across the border into Maqbuza Kashmir, into the occupied Kashmir. They wouldn't let me go. So I then came back, but I was ready. I was ready, willing, and able to do that. Then I came back to the UK, and then I thought, right, what's my next mission? At that time, there was Kosovo was taking place. We're talking like 97, 98-ish, early time, the whole Kosovo thing. So I thought, okay, I'm going to go to Kosovo and I'm going to fight with the Kosovans to get liberation from the Serbs. That was my plan. And then during that time, I also came up with a couple of other ideas, and I thought, why don't I set up like a security firm, what today you would call military contractors. So I've got all this experience. I know these guys, my friends who have got experience of fighting and been in wars. And if we get together, we can provide like a military contracting service where we can provide bodyguards, we can provide training to other Muslims in other Muslim countries. So you could say I was slightly commercializing my experience as well. I thought, might as well do that. Now, this is 1998. No one's even heard of military contractors or security firms, anything like that.
Yeah.
So I'm talking to the guys. I said, look, we need a base of operation. A friend of mine was a Yemeni, and he said, why don't you go to Yemen? I go, Yemen? Why Yemen? He goes, it's a lawless country. It's ruled by tribes. There's weapons everywhere. You can quite easily set up there a base. Because obviously, if you're going to do military contracting, you have to have weapons training and live firing and stuff. I can't do that here. So we need to be in another country. So that was the intention that I went to Yemen. Because a lot of people ask me that, what were you doing there? If you're innocent and you're not a terrorist, so why did you go there? Well, that's why I went there. I was in Yemen for 2 weeks before I got arrested. Unbeknown to me, the actual the tribe that I was aligned with in south of Yemen was a very hardcore anti-government tribe. They were being watched. So when I turned up with my guys, all these, Pakistani guys with shalwar kameez on and big beards and big imamas on their head, they're like, what's the Taliban doing here? Kind of thing. So the mukhabarat basically grabbed us from the hotel, and I was actually arrested from a hotel. I was blindfolded, and I thought I was being kidnapped, because that thing happens. If you're a British citizen, you get kidnapped for ransom. I was thrown into like a dungeon, and then for 2 weeks I was tortured by the Yemeni, by the intelligence services and by their their police. And I was forced to sign confessions that I was planning terrorist activity, that I was going to blow up the British consulate, I was going to blow up an airplane, I was going to blow up a hotel, and all this sort of stuff. And after 2 weeks of being tortured, I would have admitted to killing John F. Kennedy and sinking the Titanic, because, you'll say anything just for the torture to stop. I was, so then I was moved into a prison. Then the court case started. The whole world's media was there. The British consulate was there. Everybody was there. And there was a massive uproar. The day we got into court, we all denied the charge. We said we were forced. We were tortured. And then after that, the judge banned all the media. There was a sham trial for 6 months. During that 6 months of the trial, the president of the country, Ali Abdullah Saleh, had already said on national state television, these guys are guilty. So the judge hasn't passed a verdict yet, and you've already called us guilty. So what do you think the verdict's going to be? Nobody's going to go against him, because it's not exactly a democracy. It's still not a democracy. So what do you think it was like then? It was Britain was attacking Yemen for being an exporter of terrorism. So it was a foregone conclusion. I was sentenced to 5 years in prison I was arrested in 1998. So I did 5 years in Yemen in prison. I was released in 2003, and then 2003 is just a whole other chapter in my life.
So from that, so you were in prison during kind of 9/11.
Yeah.
The whole scenario.
I saw the second plane going into the building live from the prison. Somebody had a TV in there.
Bloody hell. I can't even imagine what that would have been like in that prison.
It was like, you mean the prison itself?
Yeah. Well, the whole process.
Yeah.
The whole thing happened.
Look, the prison was a prison. I've been to prison in the UK.
Yeah.
It's prison in the UK is a bit like a holiday camp to a certain extent.
Yeah.
But prison in Yemen was a real prison.
Yeah.
I think in my 5 years, I saw 5 people die. 2 literally as far as where you're standing now, sitting now rather. I spent a lot of time in isolation because we weren't allowed to stay with general population because they said that, we were a subversive, force, because, we were corrupting the others, because we used to tell everyone to pray. And, if they didn't pray, because we used to do 5 times Jamaat because we had like barracks and we used to do Jamaat 5 times a day. And so obviously anyone who didn't get up, because they're lazy, will like shake the bed. Go, come on, get up, pray. And they just thought that we were, a bit subversive in the way we were. So they kept us in like an isolation wing. So it's like it's lots of cells, but there's nobody else there. So you might be on your own in the cell, and there's somebody next to you, and there's someone next to you, or there might be 2 of you in the cell. So most of my time was spent like that, in sort of and sometimes I'd be in solitary confinement as well if I got into trouble, if I got into a fight with somebody, or whatever, because I can't help getting into fights because I'm just like that, My fuse is very short. When someone says something bad or something wrong, then, I know people say, well, you need to control your temper, but sometimes you can't. I am who I am. I'm not going to try and be somebody I'm not. Which is, I got a lot of stick for that because the media picked up on that I said that if somebody comes into your face, knock his teeth out. Yeah, and I said, well, what's wrong with that? Under British law, I'm allowed what's called a preemptive strike. If somebody comes into my space and I feel threatened, I don't have to wait for him to hit me first. I can do a preemptive strike to defend myself. So I can basically smack him in the face and potentially knock his teeth out, but I can defend myself. That's called defending myself because he came into my space. The law allows me that. So what's wrong with that? And then, obviously they're trying to twist it around, so, if you want to stand for a councillor, is that the kind of behavior of a councillor? I said, what do you think a councillor is? Some kind of saint? A councillor's a human being. He's just a normal person. He's not an angel. So I said at the end of the day, yeah, but what if you're in the council house and somebody comes up to you and starts arguing with you? I said, I'll argue back. But would you punch him in the face? If they attack me, then I'll fight back. Well, am I not allowed to defend myself? Just because I'm a councillor?
Well, hopefully it'll never come to that.
Well, no, but the way they were trying to take it, and I know they're trying to, because they're trying to show me as a violent person.
Yeah.
Yeah. But what I'm trying to say is that, sometimes violence is necessary to defend yourself. If somebody's attacking my wife or my kids and I'm walking down, some far right guys jump out of a car with baseball bats and start to attack my wife or my kids, am I going to talk to them? I'm going to use violence to subdue them. So, it's people.
Proportionate response.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think sometimes people, in trying to be too good and trying to be too nice, they misrepresent the situation. As you can see, and as you will, as the conversation goes on, I say as it is. And that's why I appeal to a lot of people, because they see me as a real person. I'm not, there's no filter. I'm not all dressed up and to act in a certain way, getting coaching classes and don't say this and don't say that. No. Because people want real representation. They want a real person who understands their situation, who will go into the Birmingham City Council chamber and will fight and will have a backbone and will say what needs to be said. And I'm that guy.
Yeah. You're experiencing the situations that have engulfed your life, really, have kind of led you to this. But so you got back to the UK in 2003. Then the next chapter, because you've done a lot of good since then, like in the communities and working with the youth and things. How do you think that affected what you did next?
So we're talking now from 2003 until now, approximately 25 odd years.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, during that time, I've had to rebuild my life. I've got this specter over my head of being a terrorist.
Yeah.
Obviously, people's opinions vary. Some people were, they're not bothered, but others. So it's dealing with the cold shoulder, dealing with people's remarks and whatever. And obviously, in the early days, I was, it was an adjustment for me. Even psychologically, some people said that, I had, like PTSD and stuff like that. But I've never really, sort of let that affect me. I'm a strong believer that as a Muslim, I can heal myself. The Quran is a shifa. It heals you. And if you ask Allah for help and you do your dhikr and you read the Quran and you do good deeds, whatever issue you've got, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will fix those issues. So I've never gone to a doctor or psychiatric or medication. I've just dealt with it myself. But then again, I probably always had a few screws loose anyway, so it didn't really make much difference. I'm not really, not a lot's really changed. Well, no, a lot has changed, but maybe I'm not as crazy as I used to be as a young man. But I just channeled that anger into a different way. I've channeled that aggression into a different direction.
Because you came out in 2003, and that's post 9/11.
Yes,
that's the Afghan war going on. That's the Taliban and the terrorists,
Syria and ISIS and Al Qaeda.
So you're right in the middle of all that.
Yes,
and you're labelled with that label.
Yeah. So for the first few years, I just was getting back on my feet. Then this whole thing around ISIS started, and how everybody was talking about ISIS, and
the next episode. Within the
and all of that
fight on terror,
the war on terror. So because of my background, people started asking me what my opinion was of ISIS. Now I said, look, I don't really have an opinion at the moment because I don't really know anything about them. Let me research. I'm not just going to believe BBC and CNN. I need to do my own research. I still had contacts in Afghanistan. I knew people that were coming and going from Syria. So when they would come back to the UK, I would sit down and I spoke to them. And after doing my own research, I came to the conclusion that ISIS was a criminal gang that had hijacked Islam for their own personal benefits, and that they were not representing Islam. They were not looking to establish a caliphate. They were a concoction. They were made in a test tube by the West to do their bidding. That was the conclusion that I came with. Now I couldn't prove it at the time, but that was my gut and my mind was telling me, and from the conversations that I had, because the real mujahideen would not do those kind of things. The real mujahideen don't kill innocent women and children. The real mujahideen treat prisoners of war with dignity. They don't burn them alive and whatever. And they don't fly airplanes into buildings, killing women and children. They don't blow up trains, with women and children on there. This is got nothing to do with Islam. This is a complete anomaly. Which religion do you follow? And whoever's doing this, you're not representing Islam. So even though people assume that I was like that, I was never like that. I've never promoted terrorism. I've never promoted, harming innocent people. I'm an old fashioned where soldiers fight soldiers. It's a battlefield. He's trying to take me out and I'm trying to take him out. And that's it. It's in the battlefield. This cowardice acts of blowing up airplanes and trains. What nonsense is this? Which religion, which Islam teaches you this? So I started to be a very vocal and vociferous voice against what was going on. It started off by me having one or two conversations here and there. When I'm in the gym, a couple of guys say, Shahid, what you saying? This, that, and there. What's it all about? And then it kind of snowballed where, I get invited to the masjid. I get invited to a community center. And then it just snowballed from there. And literally it got to a stage where I was doing seminars, workshops up and down the country. I was approached by the Home Office to get involved in their de-radicalization program. I kind of resisted, but then some other people contacted me who were involved and they said, look, if you don't want to work with them directly, work with us. Yeah, we need your voice on this circuit because the current people that are out there supposedly doing the de-radicalization work are useless. And all they're doing is just slandering Islam and they don't know what they're talking about. But someone like you with your experience, you will say as it is and you won't throw Islam under the bus. So I said, okay. So I was going, up and down the country, to different, social workers, police, telling them about all this sort of stuff, what's going on. I was going to schools, colleges, universities. And then that took me to Europe as well. I went to the European Parliament. I've been invited by the United Nations, development, I've got the other part of it. So I've been around the world with this. I did programs in Sweden, in Malmo for nearly 5 years, as a consultant, but then obviously, we became good friends and with the organization over there and the guys running it and helping them set up their DRAD programs, their anti-youth violence and anti-drugs. and all that sort of stuff. So bringing my experience, and even there, I was in Sweden. I was teaching the police and social workers, and how to deal with this kind of narrative, and how to how to debunk that narrative, and how to have these kind of difficult conversations. So that was like I said, that sort of snowballed, and then that was the direction that I started going. As well as the work that I was doing in the UK, I was doing mentoring, and I'm a life coach as well. The amount of phone calls that I get and messages that I get from parents, from young people. I do a lot of stuff on social media, videos, just sort of, helping people to overcome difficult, situations. And, I'm forever brother, thank you very much. Saw your video, changed my life. I started going to the gym. I started praying. I started to, talk to my mom and dad. Got parents calling me. My son went to school with a knife. Can you talk to him? Can you put some sense into him? And, I get calls from all over the country. I get messages from all over the country, even from abroad as well. So that's all I've been doing for the past 25 odd years, is just working in the community on a national and even international basis as well, doing the things that I was doing prior to me getting locked up as well. So for me, it's always been about the community and about helping people and being of service. I'm not a businessman. I'm not a rich person. I'm not here to make money. I have done business. Some have worked, some haven't worked, because everyone's got to pay their bills. Because someone like me can't really get a job. Who's going to give me a job? I've got no education. I've got no skills. I've got this, this label as well, of being a terrorist. So it's very hard for someone to give me a job.
Yeah.
So I had to make my own way. So it's been.
Talking about the terrorist label though, because obviously when you came back from Yemen, I know this because you told me this before, but what did the British government? What was their verdict on this? Yeah, the notifications and paperwork that you received from them. So this is where a lot of people don't understand. They think that I'm just saying these things, that I was innocent, I was tortured, I was forced to, and I'm not guilty. Okay, you don't have to believe me, but surely you're going to believe the British government, because why would they lie? Why would they? If I was guilty, they would have hung me upside down. Metaphorically speaking. Yeah. So they wouldn't do me any favors. The British probably
government
got nicked the minute you stepped foot back in the country.
So while I was in prison, I was interviewed by the British intelligence services. They never identified themselves, but I knew who they were. They came with the British consulate. The British intelligence services have their assets on the ground in Yemen as well. So they've made their own investigations.
The network,
and then they report back to the Foreign Office. Yeah. When I came to the UK, up until this day, I have never ever been arrested and sat down and interviewed by anti-terror police. What were you doing in Yemen? Why did you go? At least, look, it's a formality. We need to question it. Never. Up until this day, I've never ever been questioned by anybody in authority. On top of that, when I got the verdict of guilty, Baroness Scotland, who was the Foreign Office secretary at the time, said, and I've got it in writing, I can show you afterwards. It's all on my phone. I've got all the documentation. My solicitors had it all. The British government officially said that the verdict, the verdict was that there was a miscarriage of justice. We had received a miscarriage of justice, and the verdict was unsafe, and we will be making representations to the Yemeni government, and so on and so forth. And then there's loads of interaction where, the ambassador's going to speak with the Yemeni president, on our behalf to get us, to get this sentence, quashed and so on and so. If I'm guilty, why would you be doing all of that?
And wasn't it the case that, I might have this wrong, but I think I read this somewhere before, about your situation, but wasn't it the case that due to this representation by the British government and the consulate, I know it was a long time you were in prison, but you only got 5 years instead of a much larger sentence, because theoretically wouldn't that have carried a lot of harsher sentence?
No, but you see, here's the other thing as well. My actual conviction is for, the actual title is being a member of an armed gang. There's no mention of terrorism in my conviction. This is something that the British media has been spunning, convicted terrorist. Yeah. Actually, if you want to be literal, I was convicted for being a member of an armed gang. who was planning acts of violence. So be factual and say I was convicted for being a member of an armed gang. It never said I was a terrorist. Yeah, this is the spin that the British media have put on. Now, when I question them, you're calling me a convicted terrorist. Where's your evidence?
Where's the T word mentioned?
Where's your evidence?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you've got, so where did you, but that's what no. You're supposed to be journalists. You're supposed to do research. Yeah. Be factual. You're just following every Tom, Dick and Harry. Where does it say, have you got a copy of the verdict of when I was convicted? Have you got a copy of it? If you haven't, so where are you getting all this information from? So you're just slandering me for no reason. So, I can go into the semantics of it, but I know that they're not going to change because they have a narrative that they want to push and they're going to keep on pushing it. And actually, to the contrary, this negative narrative that they keep pushing, they've just made me more famous to a whole new generation of people who didn't know who I was. Yeah. So thank you very much for the free marketing. They've tried tooth and nail. The far right have gone ballistic. Videos after videos. Someone sent me one today. How can a convicted terrorist become a member of the council and parliament and this and that? They're going bonkers. There was a petition that was signed. A couple of 100,000 people signed it. Yeah. But it got rejected. Because this is a democracy. This is a country with laws. This is not, it's not Yemen. Yeah. We have laws here. And as long as I don't infringe on any of the laws, I can stand. And I have been accepted. My name's on the ballot. So all of their efforts have gone to waste. In fact, all they've done
raise your profile.
Is raise my profile, make me more famous.
Ultimately, you're on a local councillor ballot.
Yeah. But
you've got national press.
International press.
International press.
I've had people call me from America, from Malaysia, from other places. Bro, what's going on? Why are we reading about you in the news here? Oh, I don't know. They just got a fascination. So it's actually done me good, as I said, it's good publicity for me.
Because whereas that you've been through horrendous circumstances in Yemen, you've come back, you've built yourself up a respectable life, you're doing a lot of good, you're working on an international basis already. What made you step forward for the council? What's triggered you to do this?
So look, I've always been around politics indirectly. Yeah. It's not like I'm a novice. The only thing is that politics never interested me simply because at that time, to get into politics, you have to join a political party. I saw all the political parties as the same cheeks of the same backside. There's no difference. Yeah. So, and especially now with their sort of, their bloodlust for going into illegal wars and this craziness that they're on about just to go around the world, every Muslim country, bombing them, killing them on so-called weapons of mass destruction and this and that. And, just illegal war after illegal war, genocide after genocide. So how could I be a part of any of these political parties, be they Conservative or Labour, Lib Dems, anybody? My values don't align with them. So that's why I had opportunities in the past to do that. I could have quite easily got into politics with my, popularity. But I didn't because of that. Then when this whole independent movement came along, the ICA, the Independent Candidate Alliance, which was set up by Shakil Afzar and Ahmed Yaqub. And I'm also like a sort of a part of that as well. One of the, after them, I was a third person to get in, to be a part of that. They sat me down and said, look, Shahid, there's going to be a massive change in this coming election. Labour is going to be decimated. Yeah. Their rule is finished. Their tyranny is over. People have had enough of them. Yeah. So not just on the national level, but on the local level. And we can see what's happening in Birmingham with all the, the bin strikes and the antisocial behavior and the illegal parking and the lack of opportunities, the lack of funding, nothing for the youth and all the rest of it. So they sort of said to me, look, I said, look, I don't want to get involved in politics. They said, look, you can stand as an independent. I said, okay, explain to me what you mean by an independent. When they explained to me, I thought, okay, that kind of makes sense. So I said, let me do istikhara. Let me think about it and I'll get back to you. And alhamdulillah, I did my istikhara and then I thought about it and then I decided to put tip my hat into the game. And that's basically why I got in, how the sort of background behind it. Now, for me, A lot of the stuff that I will be doing as a councillor, I'm already doing.
Yeah.
So whether I win or lose doesn't really make any difference to me, because I've already been doing that sort of stuff, and I will continue doing that. So even if I don't win the election, I'm still going to carry on doing what I'm doing. If I win and I become a councillor, I just see it as a way to amplify the work that I'm doing. It gives me access to certain things that I probably wouldn't get access to as a civilian, like budgets and having a say in where those budgets are allocated, seeing the internal workings of the Birmingham City Council,
doors,
and saying, all right, okay, so, why is this contract going over there? Why this is for contract work that has to be done in Birmingham. Why is it going to a London contractor? Why can't we give it to a Birmingham contractor, thus creating jobs and boosting the economy? So, I'd be privy to a lot of these sort of things. And also the way that I am as a person, I'm not one to just sit on the fence. If I see something wrong, I will call it out. And the biggest factor here is that I'm independent. I'm not under any whip. I'm not under any party control. I speak for the people that elected me, and I answer to them, and I answer to Allah. Allah first, and then to the people. So I don't have to worry about what my party thinks. I'm not a career politician. I don't want to rise up the ranks and get promoted and become this and that. I'm not interested. I'm happy where I am. I want to get the job done, and that's all my. In fact, as I said, I'm all about the next generation. I personally have brought into this race, into this election, 3 people. The guy who's standing with me, because Sparkins a 2-seat ward, Adam Mirza, 25 years old, a young man, running multiple businesses as for a young man. Bilal Arabi, again, another 24-year-old running a very, a good marketing company. Rihan Abbas, 23 years old, who's currently a solicitor. He's running in Sparkbrook. These people I've personally brought in and worked with them, with other brothers as well. And because we're all about the next generation. So I'm practicing what I preach. I said that if I get elected, I'll have 4 years. In 4 years, I don't want to stand again. Unless the community forces me to stand, my plan is to get another young person ready in those 4 years and let him stand, male or female. Yeah, I would prefer a female, and let them stand. Why? Because I'm not a career politician. I don't have this fascination because unfortunately, I don't want to move the conversation that way, but I think I do need to say this, that the current crop of councillors that we have today and in the past is diabolical. How can you be a councillor and you can't speak English, you can't read, and you can't write? You can speak Urdu, Punjabi, Patwari, Mirpuri, whatever, fine. So that means you can communicate with the people. How are you going to now translate that into English and fight their cause in the council house where they speak English? Nobody speaks Urdu in the council house. Yeah. So, you don't have any competency. You don't have any intelligence. Yeah. With all due respect, and this is not a personal attack on anybody. As individuals, I've said it over and over again, they're lovely people. They are good husbands, good brothers, good fathers. They've raised their kids. They've worked hard in factories and doing taxis. No disrespect to that. But this is a public office. There's a job description. If you don't fit the job description, why are you even putting your name forward? I know why they've done that, because Labour wanted seat fillers. They don't care if you can't do the job properly. As long as you come in, you've got a brotherly vote. You can bring 100, 200,000 people in to vote for you. Get in. We hold the seat. We'll have a majority. A handful of us will do the work. Yeah, and control everything. And the rest of you who can't do anything, you just walk around, cut the ribbons, get invited to people's weddings, go to Pakistan, or you councillor Sabayan, you can get protocol, and you enjoy life. And we'll pay you 20 grand a year as well. So don't worry. But you don't have to say anything. Well, as a consequence of all of that, what do we have today? Yeah. Birmingham is bankrupt. Yeah. Our streets are full of rats, antisocial behavior, illegal parking. The streets are not safe, no opportunities for the youth. And I can go on and on and on and on. Gas, canisters, drugs, people are complaining about HMOs and the proliferation of that. And all of these things. Well, whose responsibility is that? It's the council's responsibility. And who's running the council? The Labour Party. So these councillors are not fit for purpose. They need to be removed, and a new batch of people need to come in. People who are competent, intelligent, can articulate themselves, can read a budget, can understand a budget, can put counter arguments, can dissect it forensically. You know, I always say it's not just me. I have a whole team behind me. I have friends who are accountants, who are solicitors, who are engineers. If there's things that I don't understand, I'll go to a friend of mine. He's an accountant and say, look, this budget doesn't make sense to me. Can you give me some advice on how, you know, what alternatives we could put in and this and that? So just because I may not fully understand it, I've got a team around me. Obviously, depending on data protection and all that, I can't give everything out, but I can speak in general terms that how would one deal with this and how would one deal with that. So this is where, you know, we need to be more involved, and we need to get the younger generation involved. And that is exactly what I'm doing and I intend to do. And alhamdulillah, it's going very, very well. I have a lot of support, but as I always say, it's, will they turn up on the day to vote? You know, people can be lazy.
Yeah, of course.
You know, and that's the key thing. You know, so everybody listening, if you're in Sparkhill, you know, please on May the 7th, vote for me and for Adam Mirza.
Excellent. When you stood in this seat, obviously we spoke about how negative backlash is a good thing in reality, because any PR is good PR. Were you expecting as much? Were you expecting GB News to jump into this as much as they have?
Of course. Come on, look, I'm not naive.
Yeah.
To be honest, I expected more.
Really?
I expected a much more harsher attack.
Yeah.
So I was geared up and ready for a big fight, but it didn't transpire. You know, you know, in Punjabi Urdu they say, you know, okay, khodiya paar te nikliya chua. You know, these big, you know, they turned out to be little mice. I was expecting a good fight, you know, a good strong challenge. They were going to come for me, but it's been very weak. Their attacks, same old stuff, regurgitating. Like, wow, as if it's anything new. This stuff I've been talking about for decades. I've been very open about my background. I've never hidden it. I've spoken about it. I've done mainstream media, BBC, Al Jazeera, Sky News. You know, they've made documentaries about me. I mean, we're talking about 10, 15 odd years ago. I've had documentaries made from the Netherlands, from other countries. So it's not like you've just got a scoop. Oh, we just found out this. Come on, guys, you know what I mean? Yeah, do your homework, yeah? Everybody knows who I am. So you haven't got no exclusive on me, yeah? This is why now I don't even bother entertaining it anymore. I've said my piece. I've given the interviews. I've made the videos. I've clarified all these things. You know, like I said, you know, a mainstream newspaper contacted me yesterday that, you know, so-and-so is saying this about you and blah, blah, blah. And do you want to have right to reply? I said, no, mate, can't be bothered. Yeah, you just print whatever you want to print, because whatever I say ain't going to make any difference anyway. I've already clarified my position. Yeah, take it or leave it. It doesn't bother me.
Fair enough. So with the local community, obviously, that hoping will come out for you in force on May 7th, you're holding a number of public, like, clinic-type meetings out on the streets. When's your next one? It's coming up.
So I'm doing one on this Saturday, which would be I don't know what the date is on Saturday. So that would be in Sparkhill, by sort of like near East and West. We'll just have a table, we give out leaflets, and, you know, we've got a banner, ask us any question you want. You know, because, look, like I said, I'm someone that likes to confront people. Maybe confront's the wrong word. I like to be someone that you can come to and just ask anything you want, because I've got nothing to hide. Yeah. Be critical, but polite. You know, and if you want to support me, I mean, most of it is good. I get a lot of support when I'm out on the streets, when I'm knocking doors, when I'm delivering leaflets. You know, people blowing their horns and people stopping their cars, and I'm going to be waiting for you. Today I was literally coming out of Aldi's, I went to get some milk and bread. I came out and there's a guy, you know, he goes, Shahid, I'm voting for you. I'm like, okay, you know. So that's every day. That's all I get, you know. So it's about interacting with the people. You have to make yourself available. Yeah. And you have to be ready for criticism as well. Because not everyone's going to agree with you. You know, people say, oh, but you know, you shouldn't be standing because you've got this conviction. I'm like, okay, that's your opinion. But the Electoral Commission sees it in a different way because they've let me stand.
They've allowed you on the ballot.
Yeah, so, you know, you can have your opinion. That's fine. Yeah. You don't have to like me. You don't have to agree with me.
But it's a democracy, as you said, so they can vote.
It doesn't make no difference to me. There's no sweat off my nose.
Yeah. So with what's happening in the council at the moment, obviously we've discussed about Labour and the diabolical situations we've got, but a lot of it's obviously financially driven, economically driven. So they say that they can't fix the potholes, they can't sort out the bin strikes, and they can't do stuff because of a lack of money. What do you say to that?
It's not lack of money. It's incompetence and mismanagement. Yeah. Look, you're a professional. You're coming from a commercial business background.
Yeah.
I've had commercial businesses. In our business lives, if we were to act like this, or if a member of our staff, or if a senior manager was to behave like this, you know, he'd get a P45. Yeah. And he'd be out. Yeah. Yeah. Now, the problem is that all of these decisions are being made by these people. The reason why they carry on making it is because it doesn't affect them. It doesn't affect their pocket because our council tax keeps going up. So we have to keep on paying for it. So their incompetence, we pay for it. So I floated this idea with some of my friends. I said, how about if I get in, I put a motion in that every time a group of councillors who are making decisions, and on the basis of that decision, we have a loss. How about when we have that loss, everybody involved in that project or in that decision-making process has 25% of their wages cut for a period of 5 years. They can still pay their mortgages, but let them feel it a bit as well. So maybe next time round, they'll think twice because now they're feeling it in their pocket. Because whenever these councillors make these mistakes, they still get paid their salaries. Yeah. They don't get penalised. So we get penalised. Yeah. Yeah. You know, I mean, look, this athletes village. What a disaster. They didn't build it in time. Nobody stayed there. It cost hundreds and hundreds of £millions to build it. And now they're trying to sell it for 50 million quid. So surely somebody needs to lose their job over this. £100 million spent on this Oracle system, which is still not fit for purpose. I was talking to some of the bin strike guys, and they were saying that so far they've spent £40 million in getting other people to come and do the bins. Even if the strike is over, it will take them, I've done something like 10 years to recuperate that money. So it's just loss after loss, compounded. Why? Because the people at the top, I believe, their egos won't allow them to negotiate because they are being controlled by other people in their quest to decimate the unions, to take out these different organizations and groups. And that is coming from the top and it's feeding down to them. And they're in this spiral, downward spiral. And it's just madness after madness, loss after loss, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of pounds. Birmingham City is not a poor city. We have plenty of money. It's being mismanaged. That's why I know if the right people get into the council and the right with the proper understanding, we are not a poor council. We can't even, look. Right now here's minus. We're at -10. If I get elected, I'm going to come in at -10. In 4 years, if I can bring it to 0, that's an achievement from my perspective. But the people are going to say, but we're still at 0. Yeah, but we were -10. It's not going to happen overnight. It is 14, 15 years, 20 years of rot and mismanagement and cronyism and corruption, and it's not going to change overnight. But we've got to put our foot down and stop it. Draw a line in the sand. Say, right, no more retreating after this. It's only going forward. And I believe that we can do it. I have the capability. I have the leadership skills. I have the enthusiasm. I have the ability to do, I believe, what needs to be done. And a vast majority of people believe in me that I have what it takes to do that. And inshallah, if other councillors, independents get involved as well, collectively we'll work together. And I've said this as well. I'm more than happy to work with other parties, councillors. If it's for the betterment of Sparkhill and for our community, I will work with Labour. I will work with Conservative. I'll work with the Green. I'll even work with the Reform candidates if it benefits Because it's not about my ego.
If the outcome's good.
Yeah, if the outcome is good. It's not about my ego. I don't want to work with them. No, put your differences aside. Do what's best for the community. That's why. And as an independent candidate, I believe that I have the ability to do that. Whereas somebody in a party is going to be held back.
Because the other thing, you obviously mentioned the bin strikes, but the other thing of contention, within the working community in Birmingham, the other point is the potholes and the frigging 30-mile-an-hour speed limits. What do you think the motivation was behind those? And why can't they fix potholes? What's the issue?
Because they're reallocating money. Look, when you've got a £500 million hole, you have to reallocate money. So it becomes about a priority. Is this a priority or is that a priority? So the decision makers are sitting there and they're deciding what is a priority and what is not a priority. Then it comes down to the councillor themselves. How strong is your councillor? Majid Mahmood now, who's in charge of the highways, I don't really want to drop names here, but I'm just giving you an example because he's the currently elected person. He has the power to direct, these contractors to fix whatever. Now he's in his constituency. I'm sure he's been working very diligently in getting rid of the potholes and dealing with all the issues there. Well, he can because that's his department. The Spark Hill councillor, the Spark Brook councillor, the Allen Rock councillor, why isn't he as diligent as him? Why isn't he as forceful and pushing for the potholes and for these things to be fixed in his area, in their area? These are the questions that need to be asked to these people. And what people say to me is that, brother, what are you talking about? A day after they elected, we never see their face again until 2 months before the next election. You reach out to them, you send them emails, they don't respond. They don't hold surgeries. They don't interact with the people. They don't talk to the people. They disappear. So that's where the problem is. It's because of these incompetent councillors and the mismanagement of the funds and other places being prioritized rather than the areas that we're talking. I mean, we're from the inner cities, Spark Hill, Sparkbrook, Allen Rock, Small Heath, Aston. These are neglected areas. King's Heath isn't a neglected area. Other sort of, if you go to Moseley and Hall Green or whatever, they're not as neglected as these areas are. I wonder why.
Yeah. Still got as many potholes though.
They have, yeah.
At the moment. Yeah.
But they're catching up.
Yeah.
I mean, recently, they've done that whole strip of Wade Green Road. Yeah. They re-tarmacked it all, so but what about a little bit further down, to the left? What about all of that? So look, it is what it is. Am I going to come in and, wave a magic wand? No, I'm not. I'm not going to sit here and BS people and say that I'm the best thing since sliced bread. I can do this. No, I will do my best that I can do. But this is an uphill fight and it's going to take more than 4 years. But one thing I can guarantee you, if I'm elected, I will not sit back and be dictated to and told to and be brushed aside. Never. I will be a force to be reckoned with in that council. They're going to have a shock because they've never met anybody like me. I'm not one of these pushover guys who can't speak English, who's got an inferiority complex. No, sir. I'm polite. I'm well-mannered, but if you think you can just, brush me aside and be condescending towards me, no, you got another thing coming because I'll give it back to you 10 times more than what you give to me. Why? Because I have the mandate of the people, because the people supported me and I can't let my voters down. I can't let my ward down. I have to stand for them. Otherwise, I'm a liar and I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to tarnish my reputation and give up on my community.
Become a councillor like you just described.
No, it never happens.
Yeah.
Never. That ain't going to happen.
Okay, fantastic. If there's so now obviously the elections are coming up. This is our time on our channel with us. You got a 30-second pitch to say to your voters to vote for you directly to your ward, to that camera there, yeah. What would you say?
A vote for me is a vote for change. Change that is desperately needed. Those of you who know me, You know that I'm from Spark Hill. You know my background, the good and the bad, and everything else in the middle as well. I will bring the change that is needed. I will fight for the rights and for what is needed in Spark Hill. I'm not going to get pushed around by these fuddy-duddy guys sitting in the council house. I will represent you. I will advocate. I will be a strong, firm voice that will bring about prosperity and will change things that need to be changed within Spark Hill and in the wider area of Birmingham.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. It's been really, really interesting. Really appreciate your time and best of luck.
No, thank you very much. I'd just like to say thank you to Morgan Reach TV for having me on the show today. If you haven't subscribed, do subscribe to them. They're doing a fantastic job. I really enjoyed this sort of interview, and I look forward to coming back on again at some point, maybe after I'm elected. But yeah, thank you very much.
Hi, thanks very much for tuning in today for that fantastic episode. I learned a hell of a lot about what's going on in the council and with the coming elections. Hope you have too, and please do tune in for more episodes coming soon, and please do like and subscribe to our channel, Morgan Reach TV.